The sky cracked open like torn metal as the last of the orbital cannons fell silent. Smoke covered the valley below where once a city stood. Now only scorched ruins and flickering embers remained. No one moved through the dust. The silence was not peace. It was fear that something still breathed in the ruins. Alia stepped lightly between broken walls and melted stone. Her boots crunched softly on shattered glass. She had read of this place in Forbidden's texts, called it a dead zone, cursed by the past. But her scanners had picked up an impossible signal here. A pulse of ancient human tech buried deep under centuries of ash. Her kind had long called humans extinct. Their war ended 300 years ago, their ships gone, their soldiers faded into myth. But she had found something, a moving shadow beneath the ruin. A heat signature. Not machine. Not drone. Alive. Breathing. Large. Waiting. She passed the burned skeleton of a transport tank. Its frame was melted like wax, claw marks still fresh on its side. Something massive had torn through it not long ago. Her breath quickened, but her hand remained steady on the grip of her plasma baton. As she entered what used to be a domed fortress hall, the signal grew stronger. Lights flickered strangely above. And then she saw him frozen mid-swing. A massive human male, taller than any record described, bald and scarred, eyes wide with a mixture of rage and terror. His sword was halfway through an arc, yet unmoving. He didn't blink, didn't breathe. His expression was locked in the fury of battle. Dust hung around him like a memory refusing to settle. Alia circled him carefully, disbelief on her face. His armor was from the last century of the war, patched together, still humming with old tech, but there was no sound from him. No sign of life beyond the unnatural warmth that pulsed beneath his skin. She reached out a cautious hand and touched his blade. It burned, not with heat but with ancient energy. Time lock, she had only read theories. Combat stasis sealed in a single moment. A tech no one believed had ever worked. Yet here he stood, caught in the second before his strike landed. His target long dust. Then something changed. A tremor ran through the floor. Her fingers tingled. The sword hummed louder. She stumbled back as the man's hand twitched slightly. Not much, barely noticeable, but it moved. The stasis was failing. After 3 centuries, something was waking him. Alia's pulse raced. She activated her shield in a single motion, but did not raise her weapon. She stared into his eyes. There was something in them now. Movement, depth, recognition. As if part of him remembered something too deep to forget. A name, a reason. A war that was never truly over. Suddenly he gasped, a full breath. His eyes locked onto her, and he roared as the sword fell. But it struck only air. She had stepped aside. He turned to face her fully, confused, wild, blinking. In the new world, the war was still in his blood. But the battlefield was gone. She didn't attack. She simply whispered through her translator, "The war is over. Has been for centuries." He stared at her like she was speaking fire. His weapon lowered, slowly. His body trembled as the truth began to crush his purpose. And then he fell to one knee, breathing hard, sword tip scraping against stone. The silence returned, but now it was filled with questions. He knelt in silence, as if listening to a voice only he could hear. Alia kept her shield up, though he made no move to strike again. His sword rested on the stone floor, pulsing faintly, like it still remembered war. His chest rose and fell in slow, confused breaths. His eyes, once wild, now searched the room like a soldier waking from a long nightmare. She approached one step at a time. Her fingers twitched near the baton. Her hip, but she didn't draw it. He had shown strength that could crush her in seconds. But something in his posture told her he wouldn't attack unless forced. His breathing was uneven. His skin glowed faintly with leftover stasis energy. And yet, Somehow he was alive. You were locked, she said quietly, frozen in battle. For centuries, he blinked, and the motion was slow, uncertain. His lips parted, but no words came out. His throat moved as if trying to find sound. A moment later, he looked down at his own hands, then at the rusted remains of the world around him. He rose with effort, like his body remembered pain. Dust fell from his armor as he stood to full height. The great sword remained in his hand, but now it dragged behind him like a burden. Alia stepped back cautiously. Her every instinct told her to run, but her curiosity held her in place. "I don't know if you understand me," she said, adjusting the translator signal. "But you're not supposed to be here. The war ended. Everyone left." His brow furrowed slightly. He looked toward a broken window and saw only a sky filled with unfamiliar stars. His mouth opened again. This time words came ragged and deep. "Who won?" he asked. The voice was rough, unused, cracked by time. Alia hesitated. She had never imagined the question would hurt to answer. She wanted to say peace had won, that the bloodshed ended in unity. But the truth was different. "No one," she replied. "Everyone lost. Millions died. Your enemies vanished. Your allies betrayed each other. The war burned itself to the end." He stared at her, the weight of those words sinking like stone into his bones. The light from his blade dimmed further. His shoulders sagged, and for a second he seemed smaller. He turned in place, scanning the ruins. His footsteps echoed through the hollow chamber. Statues were shattered. Banners turned to ash. The markings on the walls were buried beneath soot and decay. His gaze landed on a nameplate near the base of a collapsed pillar. He walked over and brushed off the ash. His fingers trembled when he saw the symbol. "This was mine," he muttered. "This hall, this command post." Alia said nothing. She only watched. He looked up toward the broken ceiling where light poured in through twisted beams. Then he laughed, but it was a sound without joy. A deep, hollow thing that bounced off the walls and faded quickly. She stepped beside him. "You were left behind. Everyone else gave up or disappeared. You were locked in the moment of battle and forgotten." He didn't look at her. He only whispered one word. "Why?" The question wasn't meant for her. It was for the ghosts still hiding in the cracks of the room. Alia pulled a small device from her pouch. It showed the power readings in his body. The stasis field had faded completely now. He was fully awake, fully real. But his body still carried fragments of the old tech. Traces of something human science had never dared replicate. "You're not a weapon anymore," she said. "You're a relic." He turned his head and looked at her for the first time without anger. Just confusion. Just silence. She didn't flinch. She stood her ground. He lowered his sword entirely, letting it fall to the ground with a heavy clang. The blade sparked once and then went dark. She didn't expect what happened next. He dropped to his knees again. Not in surrender, not in pain. In grief. The warrior's breathing was slow, like someone relearning how to be alive. His hand pressed against the cracked floor, as if grounding himself to a world he no longer understood. Around him, the ruined hall stood silent. Ash drifted down from the broken ceiling like snow. Alia didn't speak. She let him feel the weight of what he had become. She activated her wrist console and scanned again. His biology was mostly human, but altered. Enhanced by ancient tech far more advanced than what remained today. His cells had resisted time itself. His mind, however, was something else. It was fragile, like a door that had stayed shut for too long and was now forced open. "I need to know your name," she said softly. "Not your rank, not your cal sign, just your name." He lifted his head slowly. His face looked older now, touched by sorrow instead of fury. His lips moved without sound at first. Then finally, he spoke with effort, each word tasting foreign in his mouth. "Kale," he said. "Kale Morin, Captain, 1st Division." Alia nodded but didn't write it down. She wasn't here to collect records. She was here to understand. And for the first time, she realized this mission had changed. What she had found wasn't a weapon or artifact. It was a person. Kale looked at the sword again. It was forged for my hand. It sang when I fought. It warned me before death came close. Alia crouched beside the blade, but didn't touch. Its glow was gone now, but she could still feel the energy inside. Like it had gone quiet out of respect for its master. "You were locked in a time field," she said. "Maybe to save you, maybe to trap you, no one knows. This tech, it was banned after the war." Kale gave a tired smile. "It wasn't supposed to be used at all, but we were desperate. We were losing." His voice held no shame. Just memory. He stood up again. His movements were stronger now, but slower. No longer the soldier leaping into battle. The stasis had preserved him, but time had found a way to catch up through his thoughts. He looked around once more and asked, "Who remains?" Alia hesitated. "There are no sides now," she said. "No enemy, no command. Just survivors, colonies, scattered systems trying to rebuild." Kale nodded slowly, but something in his eyes dimmed. He had woken up in a world that no longer needed him. He walked to a broken console embedded in the wall. It sparked faintly, still reacting to his presence. The old systems recognized him. Ancient lights flickered to life across the stone wall, revealing holograms, battle maps, troop names, lost positions. A frozen war room brought back to life. Alia watched carefully. Her people had avoided this place for generations, calling it cursed. But now she saw that it was more than that. It was haunted. Not by ghosts, but by memories that refused to fade. By a man who was still tied to a war no one remembered clearly. Kale touched a name on the map. "She died here," he said. My sister." His voice didn't break. But the silence that followed felt heavier than before. Alia turned away to give him space, but didn't leave. She understood loss. Maybe not in the same way, but enough to recognize it in others. After a moment, Kale stepped back. "I don't know what I am now," he said. "A soldier without orders, a man out of time." Alia looked up at him, her eyes steady. "Then we find out together," she said. "But not here." He didn't answer. But he nodded. They walked toward the hall's edge where a stairwell led deeper underground. Her scanners had picked up another signal. Faint, buried. Possibly another relic. Or something worse. Kale paused at the entrance, one hand on the wall. "For balance, I remember this path," he whispered. "It led to the vaults. We stored what we couldn't destroy down there." Alia's fingers hovered over her weapon as she replied, "Then let's hope it stayed locked for 300 years too." The stairwell groaned beneath their steps as they moved deeper into the earth. Dust floated in beams of pale light coming from cracks above. Alia scanned each step for traps or power sources. Her readings flickered, then stabilized. Kale didn't flinch as the stairs creaked under his weight. He walked like someone who had taken this path 1,000 times. His eyes moved with quiet memory. Alia kept pace beside him, feeling the weight of the past pressing down with every floor they passed. The vaults were below this base. The old war logs had labeled them Containment Level 0. She didn't like the name. Kale finally stopped at a rusted metal door. The markings were faded, but he traced them with his fingers. "This seal was made to hold the worst," he said. "Weapons banned even during war, projects we swore never to use. I was ordered to guard it, not open it." His voice was flat, but something dark shimmered beneath the words. Alia examined the door's lock. It was still active. Ancient code lines blinked across the surface, recognizing Kale's presence. The system hesitated, then hissed as bolts retracted deep into the stone. A long silence followed before the door groaned open. A wave of cold air rolled out, thick and dry. It carried the scent of metal and forgotten time. Inside, the room was dim. Blue lights pulsed from tubes embedded into the walls. The place felt alive, not with motion, but with warning. Kale stepped in first. His body blocked her view for a moment. When she followed, her breath caught. Capsules lined the walls, hundreds of them. Each one held a shape, something humanoid but not quite. Their bodies were twisted with armor and tech. Their eyes were closed, yet glowing faintly beneath the lids. It looked like a frozen army built. From nightmares, they were prototypes, Kale said. Created from prisoners, some volunteered. Some didn't. Bioweapons with orders burned into their minds. Controlled by sound. Triggered by blood. Aaliyah swallowed hard and took another reading. The energy signature was rising. One of the capsules was waking up. A sharp alarm echoed through the chamber. Lights flashed red. Kale turned fast, already raising his sword by instinct. Aaliyah pulled her baton but kept it low. The capsule at the far end of the row was shaking. Cracks formed in the glass. Steam hissed from the seams. "It's reacting to you," she said quickly. "It senses you're active. It's linking to your old command structure." Kale moved forward slowly. His voice lowered as he spoke, not to her, but to the thing inside. "Stand down. I am not your master. That war is done." But the capsule didn't listen. The glass exploded outward. Shards flew through the air. A creature stepped forward, taller than Kale, its skin covered in black plating and glowing red veins. Its face was half human, half machine, with a mouth that moved without breath. It looked at Kale and growled in a voice layered with static. "Unit 7, orders received. Target identified. Begin cleanse." Kale's eyes widened. "No," he said. "I rescind those orders." But the creature advanced anyway. Its arms unfolded into blades. Aaliyah jumped between them and fired her baton. The energy bolt struck the creature's chest, but it barely staggered. Kale stepped forward and swung his blade in one powerful arc. It collided with the creature's shoulder and sent it crashing into the wall. Sparks flew from its back. But it rose again, limbs resetting like a machine rebooting. It lunged at Aaliyah with a sound like grinding steel. She dodged left. Kale grabbed the creature's arm mid-swing and twisted it until the metal screamed. Then, he drove his sword deep into its core. The creature hissed and finally went still. Sparks dripped from its body as it collapsed at their feet. Aaliyah caught her breath, watching its red veins fade to black. "How many more are in here?" she asked. Kale looked around the vault and answered with a heavy voice. "All of them." Aaliyah moved to the control panel and began shutting down the capsule systems. Her fingers flew over cracked keys and half-working circuits. Sparks popped near her hand, but she didn't stop. The remaining capsules were beginning to hum with life. Kale stood guard, sword raised, watching the glow return to old nightmares. "These machines," she said, "they're not responding to voice commands. If they wake up, they'll treat everything as a threat, including you." Kale nodded grimly. "They were never meant to think. Just fight, attack, cleanse. If they sense movement, they will follow old protocols." He looked toward the far wall where a console glowed with a red warning. Aaliyah traced a wire back to the main feed. "I can overload the system," she said. "Shut it down for good, but I need access to the core." Kale didn't hesitate. He stepped forward and forced open a heavy steel door behind the command station. Inside was a chamber filled with glowing coils and ancient tech. The core pulsed with deep blue light. As she entered, Aaliyah felt a hum rise through her bones. The energy here was stronger, more unstable. It was old fusion, mixed with something human scientists had stopped using generations ago. She reached into her pouch and pulled out a tool that sparked to life. She needed only 5 minutes. No more. Kale remained outside, blade ready. He could hear the other capsules stirring. The one nearest him hissed as internal locks began to disengage. Low growl came from inside. Kale gritted his teeth. "I hope she's fast," he muttered. The sound of metal shifting echoed through the room. Inside the core chamber, Aaliyah bypassed the first layer of security. Her hands were shaking now. If she failed, this vault would become a war zone. If she succeeded, it would shut down permanently. The console beeped in protest as she forced open override access. A blast of heat hit her face, but she stayed focused. Kale stepped between the nearest capsule and the hallway. His eyes narrowed as the glass cracked. A long limb punched through. He swung cleanly, slicing through it before the creature fully emerged. The metal shrieked as it hit the ground. Behind him, another capsule began to open. Aaliyah called out, 30 more seconds. Kale didn't reply. He was already moving. The second creature launched itself out of its pod, claws extended. He rolled aside, then struck upward, slicing through its chest. Sparks flew as it crashed into the wall. The red glow in its eyes faded instantly. One more capsule burst open, this time behind Kale. He turned too slowly. The creature tackled him to the ground. Its arm blade pierced through his shoulder. Kale growled in pain and punched it across the jaw. The impact dented the metal. He rolled, reversed their positions, and drove his sword through its throat. Aaliyah slammed her hand against the core's final seal. The override command flashed green. "Done," she whispered. She hit the main shutdown switch. The room dimmed. The hum vanished. The pod stopped glowing. Silence returned like a blanket falling over fire. Kale stood slowly, blood dripping down his arm. His sword dragged slightly as he moved back toward her. "You did it," he said through gritted teeth. She nodded, exhausted, covered in sweat and dust. The corridor closed behind her as she stepped out. "I disabled their power source," she said. "They won't wake again, not here." Kale nodded, though his expression remained grim. "This vault was just one outpost," he said. "There were others. We scattered the prototypes across systems to keep them hidden from enemy scans." Aaliyah stared at him in disbelief. "You're saying there are more of these?" He looked at her and replied without emotion. "I'm saying this was only the first." Asterisk. The vault door sealed behind them as they stepped back into the upper chamber. The light from above had shifted. Dust danced in golden beams as silence returned to the ruins. Kale's steps were slower now. Blood stained his armor, and each movement came with a small grunt of pain. Aaliyah helped him sit against a wall. Her hands moved quickly to patch the wound in his shoulder. The blade had gone deep, but hadn't pierced bone. Still, the damage was bad enough to leave him weakened. He didn't complain. He only watched her work with tired eyes. "We need to get out of here," she said. "If this vault was just one of many, we have to find the others before they activate." Kale nodded. The prototypes were designed to stay hidden. Only High Command knew their locations. And I was part of that command. His voice carried a weight of guilt. She looked at him closely. "Then you have to remember, where did they bury the rest?" Kale closed his eyes and leaned his head back against the wall. "I remember a code," he said. "A phrase used to trigger memories sealed by neural lock. But it hurts to recall them." Aaliyah paused, unsure how to respond. "You were meant to be a weapon too," she said quietly. "But you woke up human. Don't let that slip away." Kale opened his eyes. "Again, I'm not sure I was ever just human," he said. "Not after what they put in me." His gaze turned to the ceiling as if searching for the stars he once knew. After a moment, he whispered something. A short phrase in an old tongue. Alia's wrist console beeped in response. Coordinates appeared on the screen. Locations across. Several systems, one after another, hidden bunkers. Cold planets, abandoned moons. She stared in shock. This can't be all real, she said. There are too many. Kale looked at the data. It was the last act of desperation. We built them in secret. Stored them away. The war was ending, but no one trusted peace. So they planned for its failure. Alia clenched her fists. We need a ship, she said. We'll go to the nearest one. If any are still active, we destroy them before they wake. Kale stood slowly, using the wall for support. You'll need help, he said. I may not be whole, but I can fight. She didn't argue. She just handed him his sword. They climbed out of the ruins as night fell. The stars above were brighter now. The wind carried a strange calm. Alia sent a signal to her orbiting shuttle. It responded with a low hum and locked onto her beacon. Within minutes, the craft descended through the haze. Kale stepped into the ship and paused. The tech was different from what he remembered. Sleeker. Colder. Alia noticed his hesitation. This isn't your war anymore, she said. But the damage from it still lives. You can help stop it now. He gave a single nod. The shuttle lifted from the ground and turned toward the dark sky. Behind them, the ruins disappeared into the shadows. Ahead, the map flickered with warnings. Each marker a potential graveyard. Or a battlefield waiting to wake. Kale rested his hand on the window. His reflection looked back at him. Not the soldier he once was, not the legend he had been made into. Just a man out of time, searching for purpose in the wreckage of his own legacy. Alia sat beside him, eyes locked on the map. Where do we start? She asked. Kale's voice was steady now. Clearer than before. The farthest one. If it's awake, it'll be the worst. The shuttle glided through orbit in silence as stars blurred into streaks across the glass. Alia sat beside the control panel, monitoring the ship's path while Kale rested in the seat opposite her. His body remained still, but his eyes stayed open. He hadn't slept since waking from the stasis vault. Alia checked the coordinates again. The farthest vault was buried beneath an abandoned mining colony called Thelos 9. Official records said it had been destroyed by radiation. But her scans showed faint energy pulses matching the prototype's tech signature. Something had survived. We're close, she said. 10 minutes. Kale nodded without looking away from the stars. Thelos 9 was meant to be a decoy, he said, but some of the worst prototypes were stored there. The ones that didn't pass control tests. They were locked in deep caverns, too dangerous to destroy. Alia tightened her grip on the controls. The shuttle descended through orange clouds and landed on cracked metal plating. Thelos 9 looked dead. Towers leaned at broken angles. The air shimmered with leftover radiation, but nothing lethal. Alia activated her suit filter. Kale adjusted his armor's seal and stepped outside with her. The wind moaned across the surface, brushing against rusted machines and long dead wires. In the distance, an old dome structure stood mostly intact. Kale pointed to it. That's the vault entrance. Underneath the dome, there's a freight lift. It leads straight to the prototype chamber. Alia followed him silently. Inside the dome, darkness swallowed their lights until they reached the control room. Alia found the panel covered in dust and corrosion. She wiped it clean and rewired the broken circuit. The freight lift buzzed to life, rattling as it opened. Cold air spilled out from below. They descended together. The shaft walls were covered in old warning signs and scorch marks. Kale's hand never left his sword. Alia felt the tension growing with every level they passed. At the bottom, the lift stopped with a heavy clang. A large chamber opened before them. The air was still and dry. Rows of containment tanks lined the room, but most were empty. Broken glass crunched beneath their boots. Lights flickered faintly above, then a sound echoed, a low growl, followed by metal scraping across stone. From behind a pillar, a figure emerged. It was different from the last prototype. This one had no armor. Its skin was fused with metal directly, its eyes burning green instead of red. It looked at Kale, then at Alia, and spoke in a deep, broken voice. Command signature detected. Executioner class. Unit E3. Directive. Eliminate threats. Restore original order. Kale raised his sword without a word. The creature moved fast. Faster than the last. Alia dodged as it leapt, claws striking where she had stood. Kale met it head-on. Steel clashed against enhanced bone. Sparks flew as they fought across the chamber. Alia moved along the wall, searching for a terminal. If she could find the central control node, maybe she could disable the creature like before. But nothing was working. The creature roared and slammed Kale into a column. The impact cracked stone and sent debris raining down. Kale groaned but got back up, blood dripping down his face. He adjusted his stance and charged again. This time, he moved with more than strength. He moved with memory. He feinted left, then swung low. The blade sliced across the creature's knee, sending it staggering. Alia found a console sparking in the corner. She connected her device and pushed a manual shutdown pulse. The lights flickered. The creature paused, blinking. Kale used the moment. He drove the sword through its chest and forced it to the ground. The glow in its eyes faded slowly as it collapsed. Alia gasped for breath and walked over to him. He leaned on the sword, breathing hard. This one was smarter, she said. Kale wiped the blood from his mouth and replied, "And the next will be worse." Kale sat on the cold floor, while Alia secured the vault. The body of Unit E3 lay motionless. Nearby, its metal frame still glowing faintly. Kale's breathing was shallow. His injuries were worse now. 2 ribs cracked. A deep cut above his eye. His sword was chipped along the edge. Alia kneeled beside him and scanned his vitals. "You need rest," she said. "Your body won't hold up if we fight more like this." Kale gave a faint smile. "There's no time. If others are waking, we can't wait. Every minute risks another system falling to these things." Alia lowered her scanner slowly. "The rest of the locations are further apart," she said. "We'll need weeks to reach the outer sectors." Kale shifted and leaned against the wall. "Then we take the most dangerous one next. The core vault. It housed the alpha prototype. It was never meant to activate. If it does, it won't just fight." Alia raised her brow. "What will it do?" she asked. Kale's eyes narrowed. "It'll lead. It was designed to command the others, to override human input. If Alpha wakes, it could bring all the scattered units together. A second war, with no sides left but death." Alia didn't speak for a long time. Then she stood and extended her hand. Kale took it, rising to his feet with effort. Together, they walked back toward the freight lift. Alia pulled the remaining power from the core systems to prevent future activation. The vault lights faded into darkness as the lift took them upward. Outside, the sky was dark purple. Storms raged on the horizon. The shuttle signal was weak, but still there. Alia transmitted their location and request for extraction. Kale looked around at the broken world, then up at the stars. He looked more tired than ever before. "I buried friends on this planet," he said. "We never expected to survive the original campaign, but we fought like we would." Alia stood beside him. "They would have been proud of what you've done now," she said. "Stopping what they never could." Kale didn't answer. His eyes stayed locked on the sky. The shuttle arrived with a quiet hiss and opened its ramp. Alia entered first and prepared the coordinates for the core vault. Kale followed, slower than before. He sat near the back and removed a piece of armor from his chest. The plate was cracked through the center. As the ship lifted off, Alia turned toward him. "When we get there, what's the plan?" she asked. Kale looked up. "You get into the vault and shut it down. I'll draw Alpha's attention." Alia shook her head. "You won't survive if you face it alone." Kale didn't flinch. "I don't plan to survive," he said. "I plan to finish what I started." Alia looked at him for a moment, then back at the stars outside. The console beeped, signaling final jump prep. The engines roared as the ship launched into FTL. Stars bent around them like rivers of light. Minutes passed in silence. Kale closed his eyes and leaned his head back. "If I fall," he said, "promise me you'll end this." Alia replied without hesitation. "Only if you promise to try not to fall." He smiled for the first time that wasn't laced with pain. The stars snapped into clarity as they exited FTL. A massive planet loomed ahead, black and cold. Beneath its surface was the last vault, the core, the final battlefield. As the ship descended, Alia and Kale stood side by side, watching. The darkness rise to meet them. Neither of them spoke again.